Woo! Let's talk about adrenal fatigue. Now remember, I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. This is purely based on my human experience in this body. And with the way my brain works, and I don't know if it's the brain fog from fibromyalgia, if it's the brain fog from perimenopause, if it is the suspected ADHD that makes me do a deep dive into something, buy all the books, do the things, and then forget it exists, or what it is. But I had, I think back in 2016, 2017, started to suspect I had adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue is not something that most doctors will even acknowledge as a real thing. Like, it is not something you can go to your doctor and get diagnosed for the most part. But I remember hearing about it and going, oh my goodness, that's me. Everything about that is me. And so I was taking supplements, specifically formulated for that, adrenal fatigue supplements. Now those supplements have tripled in price, and I have not been able to take any of them for quite a while. I bought a book. I was doing the things. And guys, when I say about a book, every time that I move, I purge. So this last time I moved, I purged a massive amount of books. These are the ones that I kept. Balance Your Brain, Balance Your Life. Wheat Belly. Eat Right for Your Type. The Fibro Fix. The Adrenal Reset Diet. Fibromyalgia and Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. And Burnout. The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. So I'm going to reread these this week. Going to reread these. But it all works together. You cannot address one thing and expect it to fix everything. You cannot. Adrenal fatigue leads to hormonal imbalance, which leads to more pain and more brain fog. And if you can't get out of the stress cycle, that's your fight or flight, fawn or freeze response, because they've expanded that now. If you haven't heard that one, it isn't just fight or flight anymore. There are 4 things. But if you cannot reduce your stress, then how are you ever supposed to heal? And when you, like me, are under mountains of financial stress, but you just keep getting sicker. So because you keep getting sicker, there's no way to earn more money to get out from under the crushing financial debt. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, it's a thing. So one of the things that the health coach and I had talked about was breathing exercises, because I cannot meditate. Cannot. I hate it. As I sit there, I become focused on all the pain I'm in. I hate it. But breathing exercises have worked for me in the past. They just weren't working now. So she asked which ones I'd use. And I said, well, breathing the box was just the simplest. It's where you breathe in for 4 minutes, or a count of 4. You hold it for a count of 4. You breathe out for a count of 4. Hold it for a count of 4. Breathe in for a count of 4. Well, I was doing more research this morning and realized that one isn't going to be as helpful as a longer exhale. So that's the one that I'm going to be practicing, longer exhale. And what's interesting is if you are singing, you are doing a longer exhale than inhale. Not that I sing well, but it would explain why when I run errands in my car, pump the music up super loud, and sing like I'm a crazy woman, I feel calmer. So that's interesting. So I've been doing the breathing the box, which is the 4-4-4-4. I'm going to switch it up and do longer exhales. I'm going to do more research on it to see if there's a specific count. I always like very specific instructions. I like to do a lot of research. I never just jump into doing something, and I like specific instructions on how to do it. So going to look into that. I'm going to check and see if either one of these have the breathing exercise, because it's been so long since I cracked these books. I would say I haven't looked at either of these since before 2020. And that tells you something, that I bought these before 2020. Also, because the longer exhale is engaging the parasympathetic nervous system. And we learned about this way back when I was in massage school, which is why if you massage yourself, it doesn't feel near as good as if someone does it for you, because if someone does it for you, only the parasympathetic nervous system is being activated, and that is the one that calms everything. But if you're doing it yourself, you're activating both nervous systems, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, not as calming. Might still, work the muscle out. So like if you do some self-massage, don't stop. But it's not going to be relaxing like regular massage, if that makes sense. What else? The burnout, the adrenal fatigue, like in me personally, I feel like I've been in fight or flight response my entire life. My entire life. And part of that is because I do suspect that I am autistic, and I am going to make a video about that. I know I've said that several times, but it seems like a very vulnerable video and a very hard one for me to make. But when I do the self tests that indicate you may be autistic online, I score high on all of them every time. And I can go into that more in that video, but when you're autistic, everything is always coming in at you with no filter. Honestly, it's going to make me cry. So I grew up in a family of 7 and then 8. So very noisy all the time. And I love my family. I'm the one that's always trying to get the family together so we can hang out and do things. My sisters are my best friends. I love my family. But when you can't shut that out, and for the good portion of my first 18 years of life, I shared a room with one or all 3 of my sisters. And all of that just coming in constantly. And then being the oldest, and then being responsible for my 4 younger brothers and sisters. And I know I say 4 and 5 interchangeably. My foster brother did not come to live with us until right before I actually turned 18 and moved out of the house. So he's my brother. We're all involved in a family group chat, and I love him just the same, but he wasn't there for the first 17 years of my life. He wasn't in the house. So when I say 5, the 5 of us, that's what I'm talking about. My parents made 7, but then when my foster brother came to live with us, there were 8 of us. And actually at that point there were 9, because my grandma was also living in the one house. And then my homeless friend moved in with us, and that's at the point where she and I moved out and got our own apartment. Anyway, so always with the fight or flight. And we've talked about how I can't sleep when the household settles down. And when you're sharing a room with siblings, I'm just laying there listening to them breathe all night long. So there was never any calm, except for every summer I would go to my grandparents for a week. Just me. And it was like resetting. At the time I had no idea what adrenal system was or the fight of life, but I was just calm and quiet. And as long as I didn't try to change the channel on my grandma's stories after she fell asleep, I never got in trouble. But then my grandpa died when I was in 8th grade. So then there wasn't that anymore. And I could go into a lot more detail about the constant fight or flight. But when you are socially awkward and you don't make friends, and you've moved to, by the time I got into 7th grade, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. By 7th grade was in my 5th school. And we'd moved. And so fight or flight response was almost always activated in me. And then I moved out when I was 18. mostly because of peace and quiet. I got along with my parents. I was not a rebellious teenager. There was not fighting. I followed the rules. Like, there wasn't rebellion. I moved out because I wanted peace and quiet. And I didn't have the money to pay for more than basic necessities. So the apartment was paid for, but it wasn't money to buy food. And I was in that with, then all of the years of my youth, in my 20s, there was always just enough money to pay the bills. And that was it. And then I got married at the age of 23 and had my first right the year before, or a month before I turned 24, but that was also or was it 97, 24. Yeah, I was 24 and then had my first right before I turned 25. But I had just been diagnosed with fibromyalgia a couple of months before I got pregnant and hadn't had time to deal with that. And then my marriage, I'm not going to talk about it much, but it was very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive. And autistic people tend to get taken advantage of by people like that. And because we don't communicate well, it didn't matter what I did. It was never right. It was never good enough. And he frequently left, but because of my very, very strict Christian beliefs, I kept taking him back because I believed once married state, you were always married. I didn't believe in divorce. And I just believed that if I prayed hard enough, it would all work out. And it did not. And when it started to affect my children, that was the end. When I was pregnant with our youngest, I found out, I was like 6 months pregnant with our youngest when I found out he'd gotten another woman pregnant. This was the third woman he got pregnant in the time we were together. And she had no idea he was married. He was taking college courses in a different city at the time. She'd met him at college. Had no idea. She just thought the reason they didn't get to spend much time together was because he lived in a different city. So she had just begun to suspect that he was lying to her about something when she found out she was pregnant. And this is the kind of person I am. Now, mind you, I'm 6 months pregnant with our third child. And I offered to raise the baby because she planned on having an abortion. And, I'm not going to get into personal feelings about that, but this was my children's half sibling. And so I asked her if I could raise the baby, and she did not even want to go through the pregnancy and then cut off contact with me, which made me very sad. I can't even imagine, though, trying to have raised 4 kids on my own, because after my youngest was born, a month later, my soon-to-be ex-husband moved to an entirely different city. So now here I am again. I haven't gotten out of fight or flight response the entire time we've been together, but now I've also been physically or verbally and emotionally abused at the very end. He got physically abusive. I wondered if he would, because by then I'd read a bunch of books. I'd also gone to counseling multiple times throughout the marriage. And sure enough, when he came back to get his stuff, he got physically abusive. So he moved to a different city, but I still had to deal with him because he had visitation. And then I have to figure out how to financially raise my kids on my own, do their doctor's appointments on my own, do their school activities on my own. Never got out of fight or flight. Never, ever, ever. There was never a moment where things went well. Never. And there was one point in time in the whole 20 plus years of raising kids that my friend took me to Jamaica. She's the one who worked for the MLM candle company. She earned enough to take 2 people, and the flight was free and everything. She took me to Jamaica for 5 days. And that's the one time in the entire 20 plus years of raising my kids that I was able to reset. And then we entered the teenage years with them. And my kids weren't bad, They were not bad teenagers, but teenagers are difficult. They just are. They're trying to figure out who they are in the world, and the mood swings and just all of it. And so then we're going through, that and also college visits, and how are we going to pay for college, and first boyfriends and first girlfriends, which also meant first heartbreaks. And by this time their dad had moved completely out of state and cut off contact with them entirely. He did that right before my oldest turned 13. My kids were 7, 9, and 11. No, 8, 10, and 12. 8, 10, and 12, because it was right before he turned 13. When he completely cut off contact after getting them every other weekend for 8 years. He got a new girlfriend. She had kids. They didn't want my kids around, and they left the state. So now I've also got heartbroken, traumatized children. And so it never stopped. It never stopped. It never calmed down. There was never weekends away. When I got a weekend off, that was the weekend I made sure that I had my kids so that I could spend time with them. And then I was looking forward. I know most people become empty nesters and they're really sad, and I was looking forward to the next part of my life so that I could focus on me, on my health. I already had my hysterectomy. I'd already gotten sicker and sicker and was able to work less and less. I already knew I was in burnout, full-on adrenal fatigue, perimenopause. I was ready for my kids to be away at college. I was ready for that break in time where it was just me and my household. And then 2020 happened. 2020 was my youngest son's senior year. And lost my business, lost our home. The next year lost my sister. And then the kids moved out, but it wasn't under the best of circumstances. And so, all that to say, that fight or flight response has been activated for all of my life. The sympathetic nervous system has been riding this bus straight into hell for years. So if we don't address that, along with eating healthy, trying to cleanse the liver, all of the other things I'm doing. Maisie! My niece's dog just walked in here and my cats are running free. Now, she's the biggest dog in the house, but she also gets along with the cats the best. She's discovered in the last couple weeks that she can just sail right over the gates. Anyway, all that to say, it's all got to be addressed. It's all got to be addressed. And I have done things to reduce stress. Like I got rid of my Facebook years ago, which on one part was like a 5% sadness that I can't keep up with my friends anymore from high school. And when you're chronically ill, you can't get out and hang out with your friends or meet up for coffee, or a lot of times you cannot do the things you want to do. So Facebook gave me a way to at least know what was going on in their lives. But it was also such a massive stressor because I could not open Facebook without being inundated with everybody's anger about politics and life and their frustration. And I just absorbed it. I have no shields left. There are none. I feel everybody's everything when I'm reading their stuff, and I can't. And even when like people politically align with me, their fervor and their anger and their whatever, I cannot. I can't. So it's not even that, oh, I don't agree with those people politically, or I don't agree with their beliefs, or it's not even that. I just cannot absorb all of that. So I'd gotten rid of that. I keep my Instagram 99% vintage. I keep the people that I follow on YouTube, that I actually watch their videos, 99% vintage. My TikToks are about cats and vintage. So I try to keep all of that. Now I can't cut out screen time, obviously, because I run my entire business through this. So I can't cut that out, but yeah. Anyway, these are things I'll be addressing too. If you want to know more about these are good books, but also there's tons and tons of info on Google. And my research method is to read at least 5 websites, at least 5 articles, at least 5 books. And the things that hold true in every single one of them are the things that I'm going to believe. Because you can't believe everything you see. You can't believe everything you read. You can't believe everything you watch. But if you've got 5 experts that agree that the parasympathetic system is calmer if you exhale on longer breaths, then that's probably true. Sometimes 5 to 10 sources I will read. But always question everything. Just because I said it, don't believe it. I don't agree with everything in here. I don't remember agreeing with everything in here when I read it. And this guy is supposed to be the expert on fibromyalgia, but some of the things that he recommends don't work for me. So, that don't believe everything you read. Read it to get info that you're compiling with other info is my advice. All right, any questions? Drop them below. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and I will talk to you guys later.